How about you know about Hollywood? When I first went to Hollywood in 1956, I kind of came in at the tail end of it. It was still Hollywood as we all knew it. At age 19, Diana Dors thought she had it all: movie stardom, a handsome new husband, and a fortune. What she didn't know was that he would soon threaten to slit the eyes of any man who didn't sign away her fortune and film her friends in compromising positions. This is the heartbreaking story of how Britain's Marilyn Monroe lost everything. Diana Mary Fluck was born on October 23, 1931 in Swindon, England. Her birth was almost tragic. She and her mother Winfred almost died during delivery. This event left a deep mark on her mother, who spent the rest of Diana's childhood making up for it by giving her everything: nice clothes, dance lessons, and lots of love. Her father Albert worked as a waiter. Albert was a railway clerk and made a steady income, but there was a problem. Diana's mother had been having an affair, so when she told Albert she was pregnant, she said she wasn't sure if Albert or someone else was the father. Despite this, Albert accepted Diana as his own, and the family went on as if there was no doubt. Diana was interested in glamour from the time she could walk. Her mother took her to the movies a lot, and she was mesmerized by Hollywood stars like Lana Turner and Jean Harlow. She didn't just admire them, she wanted to be like them. By the time she was 3, she wanted to be them and told everyone who would listen that she was going to be an actress. School was never important to her. She went to Selwood House, a small private school, but she didn't last long because she couldn't handle lessons and didn't like French class. She had many problems with her teacher, a Czech Jewish refugee, and the situation got worse until she was expelled. Her mother didn't seem too upset because Diana wasn't meant to get a proper education. Diana wanted a quiet, normal life, so instead of schoolwork, she focused on performance. Her mother encouraged her passion by paying for dance and drama lessons, and by the time she was 12, she was already acting like a much older woman, copying the stars she looked up to. During World War II, American soldiers were stationed in Swindon, and they brought Diana stories of Hollywood, glitz, fame, and fortune. Diana soaked up every word, and Swindon felt small. She wanted more. At 14, she made her first movie. She made a big move when she applied to the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, LAMDA. She was too young, but she lied about it and got in. It was a big deal because she was the youngest student the Academy had ever accepted. Moving to London was a shock. She left her comfortable home and took a small room at the Earl's Court YWCA. Her father sent her PS2 a week, but it wasn't enough to live on. She started modeling and posed for the London Camera Club for £1 an hour, which was good money at the time. During her time at LAMDA, she quickly made an impression. She was talented, sure of herself, and determined to stand out. In her first term, she signed with the Gordon Harbord Agency and soon after won a bronze medal for elocution presented by Peter Ushoff. The next term, she won silver with honors. Life in London wasn't easy for her. She was young, single, and struggling to pay her bills, but she never let it get to her. Acting was her only goal. She didn't have a backup plan to support herself, so she kept modeling when she had to. She lied about her age to get better jobs, but it worked because her mature looks helped her pass as older, which opened doors. She didn't just pose for pictures, she also had small parts in plays like A Weekend in Paris and Death Takes a Holiday. In 1946, she competed in a beauty pageant for Soldier magazine and came in third. That got her noticed, and she started getting modeling jobs and connections in the movie business. Her big break came when she was hired to work in a store at Sly Corner in 1947. Casting director Eric Lapine Smith saw her perform and thought she deserved more. The part turned into a speaking part, and she was paid $8 a day for 3 days of work. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That same year, she caught the attention of the Rank organization, which was known for developing young talent. They signed her at age 15 and put her in their Charm School, a program meant to train future stars. She hated it because it focused more on looks than acting, but it gave her a big break. By August, she had been cast in a movie. In 1947, newspapers were already calling her the Body. She was only a teenager, but she had everyone talking. Her rise in British cinema happened quickly. In Holiday Camp 1947, she stood out by jitterbugging with actor John B.L., which helped her get the part of Dancing with Crime 1947. The movie was filmed during one of the coldest winters on record, but she worked hard, making 10B a day for 15 days. Directors liked her energy, and audiences liked seeing her on screen. By 1948, she had parts in Calendar Good Time Girl and even David. Then came her big break. In 1949, she got her first major role in Diamond City, a movie set in South Africa. She played a saloon owner, a part that was originally meant for J.N. Kent but was turned down by Kent. Dors stepped up, even though she was only 17, and played the part like an experienced actress. She was paid $30 a week and proved she could handle a leading role. The movie didn't do well at the box office, but that didn't matter. It put her in the spotlight, even though her fame was growing. By 1950, they let her go, saying it was because of money problems. She wasn't downhearted. She had already made a name for herself. She had the skills, the looks, and the drive to keep going, but the industry had other ideas. Directors kept casting her as the man-mad Team AER. It started with Here Comes the Hug-It in 1948 and continued with Vote for Hug-It in 1949. She was funny and people loved her performances, but she wanted more. Critics saw her potential, but her glamorous image kept getting in the way. In 1954, she decided, I'm picking and choosing my parts now. That doesn't mean I'm waiting for the perfect part, but I'm sick to death of being the sexy siren. Her time at the Rank organization's charm school had given her a boost, but it had also limited her. The school, which was created by producer Sidney Box, trained young actors like Peter Clark and Christopher Lee. It gave her a platform, but it also put her in a box. They were more interested in making her a star than making her a star. When the school closed in 1950, Diana Dors took charge of her career. She could have signed a 7-year contract with Rank, but she turned it down because she wanted freedom. It was a risky move, but it led to better opportunities. She took on more serious roles like Yield to the Night, 1956, a movie that finally let her show how deep she was as an actress. At first glance, the comparison made sense. Both Diana Dors and Marilyn Monroe were blonde bombshells. Marilyn Monroe was the face of American glamour, but she was also known for being quiet and mysterious. Diana Dors, on the other hand, had a sharper edge. She wasn't just pretty, she had attitude, confidence, and a rebellious streak that made her stand out. In The Long Haul, 1957, she played the girlfriend of a gangster who falls in love with an American veteran. The movie had all the elements of a crime thriller, but Dors added something extra. Her character wasn't just seductive. It had all the elements of a crime thriller, but Dors added something extra. Her character wasn't just seductive, she was vulnerable and trapped in a dangerous life, desperate for a way out. She played similar roles in Tread Softly, Stranger, 1958, and Passport to Shame, 1958, showing that she could handle complicated characters just as well as any Hollywood star. The Weak and the Wicked, which came out in 1954, was one of her most important movies. It was a prison drama based on a true story. A novel by former prisoner Joan Henry, who wrote about what life was really like behind bars. At the time, there weren't many stories about women in prison, especially ones that focused on their struggles instead of making their crimes seem glamorous. Dors played Betty, a young woman who was jailed for protecting her boyfriend. The part gave her a chance to show a different side of herself. She wasn't just playing a beautiful siren, she was. The movie was released at a very important time because it showed a real person with real feelings and problems. Just before shooting began, Dors had her own legal problems in 1953 when she was found guilty of stealing alcohol from a friend's house. The scandal was all over the newspapers and people started to see her as a real-life bad girl. Instead of letting it hurt her career, she played a bad girl who felt real because she knew what it was like to be judged. The movie was a hit in Britain, and it also showed that moviegoers were wanting more realistic stories about everyday life. In the next few years, British films like Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, 1960, would become classics because they showed the lives of working-class people in a way that Hollywood rarely did. Dors had helped make that change possible. She had shown that a blonde bombshell could do more than just look glamorous. She could give the screen real depth. But Hollywood was not the same after her success in Britain. In May 1956, she signed a deal with RKO to star with George Gohl in I Am. After leaving Southampton on the Queen Elizabeth, she went straight to Hollywood after arriving in New York. Hollywood seemed eager to have her, and in July, through her company Treasure Pictures, she signed a deal to make 3 more movies with RKO. The first was The Unholy Wife, starring Rod Steiger, and her fee was $775,000. But it wasn't just business. She wasn't happy with the unholy wife, and she said, "They tried getting me in the gas chamber again in Hollywood, but the film wasn't good." More opportunities came her way. In July, William Dozier of RKO said she would star in Blonde's Preferred Gentleman with Eddie Fisher, but the project never happened. In August, she said she had signed a deal for a Bob Hope movie, but it also fell through. Another planned film, Potluck for Pomeroy, never made it past the announcement stage. In October, she went on the Bob Hope Show, and the New York Times praised her performance, saying, "The gal can handle her lines." But by November, Dors was back in. When Diana married Dennis Hamilton in London, she thought she had found excitement. At first, he was charming and full of confidence. He made her feel wanted by chasing her around with big gestures and constant attention, but beneath the surface, he was dangerous. He was controlling, violent, and careless with money and power. Their marriage was not only a mistake, it was a disaster that almost destroyed her career and left her broke. Diana was only 19 when she met him in May 1951. She was already a rising star in British cinema, but she was having personal problems. She had just had an abortion, and her boyfriend, Michael Corn Waterfield, was in jail for fraud. Then Dennis came along. He walked up to her and asked for a light, speaking with such confidence that it was hard to ignore him. He made her feel special every day by sending her flowers and pursuing her with an intensity that felt thrilling. At first, Michael was still in the picture, but Dennis didn't care. As soon as Michael was sent to jail for 2 weeks, He proposed, and within weeks they were married. The wedding at Kenton Hall in Westminster was a disaster from the start because Diana's parents didn't want her to go because they didn't agree with her getting married. Since she was under 21, she needed their signatures on documents to marry Mary, so she faked them. Someone told the registrar, who confronted them on the day of the wedding, and Dennis grabbed the man by the throat and threatened to officiate. Instead of being scared, Diana felt an odd sense of admiration for him. She later admitted that. As soon as they got married, Dennis took over everything. He became her manager, publicist, and the one who chose the roles she would play. He wanted to make quick cash, so he focused on making her a sex symbol. He turned down a $100,000 deal with Rank Studios worth more than $2 million. He pushed her toward high-pay but low-quality roles that made her famous but not respected. He set up racy photo shoots, including a controversial set of semi-naked images sold as Diana Dors in 3D. These sold well, but they locked her into a shallow image. Even worse, there were rumors that Dennis used Diana to get ahead in Hollywood. Friends and biographers later revealed that he set up for her to spend time with producers and executives in exchange for career help. Dennis, meanwhile, spent money like there was no tomorrow. He bought expensive cars, homes, and expensive gifts without asking Diana what she thought. He even leased a Rolls-Royce in her name just to make headlines about her being Britain's youngest owner of the car. He threw wild parties that kept them in the tabloids, but their finances were falling apart behind the scenes. As time went on, Dennis became less stable. At a 1956 Hollywood party, he lost his temper and someone pushed both him and Diana. As a joke, he jumped into a swimming pool, climbed out, walked right up to a photographer and punched him in the face. The next day, the National Enquirer headlined the story, "Miss Dors, go home and take Mr. Dors with you." The parties he threw became famous, and guests were caught in compromising situations without realizing it, thanks to hidden two-way mirrors. Some people thought Diana didn't know what was going on, but others weren't so sure. The rumors hurt her reputation, and Dennis was dangerously jealous when Dennis lost control when he found out Diana was having an affair with comedian Bob Monkhouse. He stormed into a club, pulled out a cutthroat razor, and screamed, "I'm going to slit your eyeballs!" Monkhouse barely escaped after kneeing Dennis in the groin and running for his life. By 1958, Diana had had enough. She filed for divorce, but Dennis still found ways to control her. He had been handling all of her finances, and after he left, she found out how he had put her company Diana Dors into huge debt. At one point, even forced her to work. She was forced under threat of violence to sign over $100,000 worth of assets. She had no money and no way to pay her lawyers, so she made a tough decision. She agreed to give News of the World a series of interviews over 12 weeks in which she told the truth about her marriage, including Dennis's control over the casting couch deals and the dark parties they had hosted. The public was shocked, and even the Archbishop of Canterbury called her a wayward hussy. Diana had just barely made it through her marriage to Dennis Hamilton, but her story wasn't over. Diana had had enough of Dennis's control over her, so she filed for divorce in 1958. Dennis had been handling all of her finances, and after he left, she found out how badly he had run her business, putting her in huge debt. At one point, he even forced her to sign over $100,000 worth of assets under threat of violence. With no money and no way to pay her lawyers, Diana had to make a hard choice. She agreed to give News of the World a series of interviews over 12 weeks in which she told the truth about Dennis. People were shocked when she talked about Dennis's control, the casting couch deals, and the shady parties they had thrown. Even the Archbishop of Canterbury called her a wayward hussy. Diana had barely made it through her marriage to Dennis Hamilton, but her story wasn't over. She met Richard Dawson on the Steve Allen Show in 1959 and felt an instant connection with him. A few months later, on April 12, 1959, they got married in New York. Richard was a British-American comedian who was still working. As he worked his way up in the business, Diana, who was already a star, thought she had found someone who really understood her. They had two sons, Mark in 1960 and Gary in 1962. For a while, things seemed to be going well, but then things started to fall apart. Diana had to work nonstop to support her family in California, and being a mother and the main source of income wore her down. Money problems put a strain on their marriage, and by 1964, things were over. Richard was given custody of their children. Diana reportedly agreed to the split so that her sons could stay in Los Angeles. The breakup put Diana in a tough spot. She had to rebuild her life after losing daily contact with her children, which was painful. But she didn't give up. She changed herself by going from movies to TV shows and cabarets, finding new opportunities and taking back control of her career. And that's when she met Alan Lake, an actor who was almost 10 years younger and full of charm and energy that matched her own. They hit it off right away, and 6 weeks later they were married. On November 23, 1968, Diana called Alan the love of her life, and in 1969 they had a son, Jason Dorslake. Their marriage was full of passion and challenges, though. Alan struggled with alcoholism and ISM, and their relationship had its rough spots. Despite this, Diana loved her role as a wife and mother while still working. Diana Dors knew how to survive in show business, maintaining the glamorous blonde bombshell image that had made her famous. By the 1970s, movie roles were harder to come by, and a new generation of actresses was taking over. Instead of fighting it, she found a new way to make a living. TV became her second act, and Queenie's Castle, from 1970 to 1972, was her big comeback. Dors played Queenie Shepherd, the tough but lovable head of a working-class family in Leeds. It was a far cry from the Hollywood movies she had once starred in, but that was the point. Queenie was bold, sharp-tongued, and full of life. People loved her because they saw something real and warm in her performance. The show ran for 3 seasons and made Dors a star all over again. This role proved that she was more than just a pretty face. She had always been talented, but now she had the chance to show it in a new way. She wasn't playing the amorous blonde anymore. She was playing a real woman that people could relate to from their own lives. The success of Queenie's came from people being able to relate to her character. Castle led to more TV roles, like in Z.C. Carr's Dixon of Doc Green and Just William, becoming a familiar face in British homes. At the same time she was trying out a different side of acting, horror movies were becoming more popular in the 1970s, and Dors saw a chance to do so. She took a small part in Beyond the Grave, a 1974 anthology horror film that had 4 scary stories, each with a different cast. Horror movies were very different from the glamorous movies of the time. She was young, but that didn't matter. She was showing that she could do more than just comedy or drama. Some people think she had a part in Theater of Blood, a Vincent Price movie from 1973, but that wasn't true. Even without that credit, her work in horror movies added another layer to her career. By this point, Dors had fully embraced her new role as a TV star. In 1980, she appeared on The Two Ronnies, one of Britain's most popular comedy shows, which was known for its clever wordplay. The unforgettable characters and Dors fit right in. She had always had great comedic timing, and this show gave her a chance to show it off again. That wasn't all she did. In the 1970s and 1980s, she was a regular guest on British game shows and panel shows like Joker Wild, Blank, and Celebrity Squares. People loved seeing her because she was funny, sharp, and always ready with a quick remark. She had gone from being a movie star to a beloved entertainer just by being herself. She became famous as a cabaret performer, where she would entertain audiences with quick-witted jokes and personal stories. This was different from acting on stage, where there was no script and no director, just doors and the audience. She knew how to work a crowd, how to make people laugh, and how to keep their attention. She even took her humor to radio on BBC Radio 2's The Law Game, where she once again showed her charm and wit. She never left the public eye, so she was always entertaining them. Diana Dors had a life full of glamour, fame, and scandal, but her last years were marked by illness and tragedy. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, battled meningitis, and had multiple surgeries. On May 4, 1984, she collapsed at home with severe stomach pain and died at BMI Princess Margaret Hospital in Windsor. She was only 52 years old. Her funeral was held a week later at the Diana became a Catholic in 1973, so the service at Sacred Heart Church in Sunningdale reflected her faith. She was buried in Sunningdale Catholic Cemetery, but Diana's story was far from over. Before she died, she left behind a secret, a cryptic message or hidden code that hinted at a fortune spread across multiple bank accounts in Europe. At first, the idea seemed impossible, because Diana had been struggling with money for years. She had lived a lavish life, spending more than she could afford, and even people started to wonder if she had hidden millions of dollars. Her past made the story even more interesting. She was connected to powerful and dangerous people like the Cray twins, and some thought she had used an old Masonic encryption system to hide her financial dealings. If that was true, she had gone to great lengths to keep her wealth a secret. Before she died, Diana gave her son Mark Dawson a message that told everyone about the mystery. Diana gave him a piece of paper with a code on it. She told him it was important, but she didn't give him the whole message. The other half of the message was given to her husband, Alan Lake. Together, these two pieces would reveal the key to her hidden wealth. But 6 months later, Alan Lake killed himself, which changed everything. Mark only had half of the puzzle, which meant he could never fully decode his mother's message. But he wouldn't give up. He had grown up. He remembered finding money hidden in cupboards at their house and seeing his mother handle large amounts of cash. He thought the fortune was real. Desperate for answers, he turned to cryptographers and forensic experts. They looked at the code and found that it was a Vigenère cipher, a complicated method of encryption from the 1600S. The key to decoding it was DMARYFLUK, which came from Diana's full name, Diana Mary Fluck. Once they cracked the first part of the message, they found a list of surnames linked to towns across England and Wales with names like Bowen, Stoke-on-Trent, and Richards Leeds. This was a big step forward, but there was a problem. The list only had last names and not the missing second half of the message. There were no first names, account numbers, or any way to track the money. Mark had come so close, but the answer was still out of reach. Some people started to wonder if Diana had really hidden millions of dollars or if this was just her last trick.